CIA black budget operations, many of them of a military nature. I was a mind control victim in these same black budget operations, and I was used as a propagandist by the CIA to help.
Recorded off-air transmissions from the Bush-Clinton presidential election campaign in the 1990s, we can see that Bill Clinton was nothing more than a puppet to the puppet masters which placed him in the White House. Bill Clinton's demeanor seems to be similar to a person who is under a hypnotic trance.
This spasm of publicity about what happened from Mexico to London was pretty rough.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Weird. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Ew. Stunning. Yeah, it was a weird. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Weird. Hello. Weird. Hello.
This spasm of publicity about what happened from Mexico to London
was pretty rough. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Weird. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Ew. Stunning. Yeah, it was a weird.
We're seeing it for the very first time, so read.
Well, a very, very heavy divertation tonight. We had a very Darrison fight. Let's go to Terracing those for the bit behind the pit.
Ohio and Wyoming to join Florida's suit. The states claiming The Exorcist saw Antisracho and lay Greenwitz by health urgent.
Thing, and I thought that was a fascinating answer.
It's okay. You want to take off the hoodie?
No, I never take off the hoodie.
I know you don't. What's with that? There's a group of women in the audience that wish you would.
No.
Girls?
Whoa.
All right.
Sorry. Yeah, that's okay.
Can you explain what this instant personalization thing was that you did, and why you did it, and what's the value of it to your users?
Maybe I should take off the hoodie.
Take off the hoodie.
Go ahead.
You want to? Are you hot? Go ahead. Here. Let me get someone. You all right?
Yeah.
This is a great moment in internet history.
What?
All right.
What are we gonna do with the mic?
Put it on your.
Put it on the collar of your t-shirt. You want some?
You need some help?
No.
All right.
Sorry about that.
About being warm.
No,
We're not even yelling at you
yeah.
yet.
We're not going to yell at you.
No, of course not. That is a warm hoodie.
Yeah. No, it's a thick hoodie. It's a company hoodie. We print our mission on the inside.
What?
Oh,
my
really?
God, the inside of the hoodie, everybody. Take a moment. What is it? Making the
world more open and connected.
Oh my God, it's like a secret
Cool.
vault. Look at that, making the world open and connected, stream graph platform, and this weird symbol in the middle that is probably for the Illuminati.
Title. It's a good day to die.
But I suppose it's because you had kind of a good day, and if you would have died, well, so be it. Is that it?
That's right. That's a good explanation. Have a sandwich, and let's go shopping.
Yeah.
Die hard.
That would have been your chosen title.
Well, it's about makes about as much sense. Good.
Appreciate it. Back here on American soil, bad news for the Obama administration. We have this new CNN ORC poll, which is quite a turnaround in.
Hi, this is Pastor Joe Green, head pastor of Antioch Assembly, located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. Recently I was listening to this big kerfluffle, if you will. It's a big controversy of Monique, the comedian, female comedian, who she's calling for a boycott of Netflix. And the reason she's calling for a boycott of Netflix is because they offered her to do a comedy special, and they only offered to pay her $500,000. Now, to the average person, me and you included, that's a lot of money. But the reason she stated that it was an insult to her is because she's considered a legendary comedian. She has an Oscar for Precious, and she's been in the business for some time. And she's had a couple successful movies, a couple of successful projects, so she bases that on or that's the basis for why she said that she deserves to have a lot more money. So now, the problem is that she compared, like, Amy Schumer, who is a white comedian who was also on Saturday Night Live, and she's been in a couple of movies like Trainwreck and a couple other movies. And she did a Netflix special, and they gave her $13 million. They gave her $11 million. She renegotiated. They offered her $13. So then you had other comedians like Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, and some others that were in the $20 million range for Netflix specials. So with that being said, Monique says, you know, I deserve more. She's now calling for a boycott, saying it was based on racial discrimination and gender discrimination. And that may be the case. I know there's a whole lot of other dynamics that are involved when you're talking about the industry, you know, the entertainment industry. But I want to share a couple of thoughts with you today. First of all, you know, as an African American myself, one of the issues that we have in Black America is that we need acceptance. We need to be validated. And, you know, some people use the term white supremacy or things like that. They say how the system's rigged against people of color, minorities. So if you do believe that it's a system of white supremacy that we live in, especially in entertainment and various other venues or places, then my first response would be just have your own, you know, do your own thing. Jada Pinkett Smith a couple years ago called for a boycott of the Oscars because she felt like her husband Will Smith should have gotten nominated for an Oscar for his performance. So she said, she called about, you know, there was racism in Hollywood, and she wanted the black actors to boycott Hollywood or the Oscars. And again, I go back to the whole point of, you know, wanting to be validated by other people. You know, at the end of the day, these stars, whether it's Hollywood or whether it's sports or whatever, we have enough talent, enough resources, and enough influence that we could have our own instead of wanting other cultures or other races to validate us. You know, when you talk about entertainment, when you talk about money or contracts, if you're in sports, if you're an athlete, or if you're an entertainer, you have the right or the option of either participating or not participating. So if I feel like the movie industry is racist towards black people, then I can either do independent films, have my own, nowadays you can have your own platform, or at the end of the day, you know, some of these black actors and actresses, they can come together, pool their resources, and with technology nowadays, they can have their own platform. Athletes, you know, 70% of the players in the NFL are black, 80% of the NBA players are black. You know, they make exorbitant amounts of money. Some of them make up in the $20 million a year, $100 million contracts, et cetera, et cetera. They have the opportunity, the resources, and the influence to have their own instead of crying foul against other people and other cultures, because it's all voluntary at the end of the day. But the reason I wanted to share some of these thoughts is the reason most of them don't have their own platform, or we don't have our own venues that we support and we build up as people of color, is primarily because the entertainment industry, whether it's sports, movies, television, music, all these things are actually controlled by the powers that be. You hear me talk about the Illuminati, and it's a fact that they are controlled and owned by a small elite group of globalists who own the world. If you go up the ladder in the music industry, in the movie industry, in sports, in banking, and other various places, when you get to the top, you're going to find one of these Illuminati bloodline families, or one of the organizations that's owned and controlled by the Illuminati. And again, these things that I'm telling you is not innuendo or speculation, they are fact. But they have consistently and historically used the media and other venues in order to control. It's called mass manipulation or mind control, social engineering. It's also called social engineering, is how they use different methods in order to create what's called a groupthink. And what a groupthink is when you get the majority of people thinking the same way. Like, for instance, in the African American community, there's a groupthink that they have socially engineered us and mass manipulated us for all of us to support liberal Democrat causes, which is why 90% of African Americans vote Democrat. And to let you know how deep the brainwashing is, because it is a form of brainwashing, the way you know it's a form of brainwashing is that even if you bring up facts and statistics and documentation to show how the liberals and the Democrats actually are not looking out for the best interests of minority groups, minorities still passionately defend them. They passionately defend Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or the Democrats in general, even though you can give them evidence, actual documentation to the contrary. Even if you can show them the track record of the last 50 years where people of color have supported these organizations, and our plight is worse than it was 50 years ago. If you look at the disparity between blacks and non-blacks, especially whites and Asians, there's a huge wealth disparity. There's a huge disparity in the family strength. There's a huge disparity in the amount of mass incarceration of black people. There's a huge disparity of highly populated areas of the inner city where black and Hispanics live, as far as crime, drugs, guns, etc., etc. So you can give them all the documentation, you can give them the proof, but yet they still passionately defend the very people that have been taking advantage of them, and that's because of mass manipulation and mind control. And so I want to share a couple of the things that they have used over the years. Now, again, everything I'm telling you is documented. You can find the information out for yourself. So I'm gonna list about 6 different ways that they use mass manipulation and mind control. The first one is this thing called Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip. Now, the CIA is one of the arms of the Illuminati. It's the intelligence bureau of the Illuminati. You may have heard of Skull and Bones. You may have heard of a lot of the other secret organizations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group. All these are secret societies that are a part of the Illuminati. You know, in order to be in the Illuminati, you have to be one of the 13 bloodlines that's in the Illuminati. Or if you're not, you can be a part of these secret organizations, or you can be an individual with great influence, and you end up being a puppet of the Illuminati. So what they do is they give you money, power, and influence. They also find people that can be blackmailed, and they promote them. And when they promote them, they can manipulate them, because even if the person doesn't want to play ball with them and follow after their agenda, they can simply expose the blackmail. Like, again, they use money, they use influence, and etc., etc. So here's what Operation Paperclip is. The secret intelligence program where they brought Nazi scientists to America. As World War II ended, the race was on the Soviet Union to seize many German scientists as possible in the anticipation of the Cold War. The full story was covert until recently. Operation Paperclip provides the most comprehensive, up-to-date narrative available to the general public. It's a book called Operation Paperclip by Annie Jacobson, if you have the chance to look at it. And she has 100 pages of notes that she shows how Operation Paperclip, because let me give you a brief history of it. So the communists, the Nazis, and these different organizations were actually different facets of the Illuminati that they wanted to use in order to bring forth a one world government. So what they did was, in Russia, they used the Soviet Union, or in Russia, they overthrew the Bolsheviks. It was called the Bolshevik Revolution, where they overthrew the Tsar of Russia and his family, and then they implemented the USSR, which was the arm of the Illuminati. In Germany, they used the Nazis and Hitler, and they used it to promote their scientific discoveries that they used the scientists in Nazi Germany. The actual Nazis themselves were the Socialist Party of Nazi Germany. They were an arm of the Illuminati in order to form a one world government. And so after World War II, these Nazi scientists were actually, most of them were brought here to America, and they used their research in many different aspects that you know of today. Science, medicine, sarin gas. So what they did in Nazi Germany in the concentration camps is they actually created different types of nerve gas, and they put it in the people in the concentration camps, and they observed how it affected the human body. They used it for experimentation. Some of the weapons that they created, space, submarines, sarin gas was one of the inventions. One called taboon came from the English word taboo, which a nerve agent that the Germans called 991, and they perfected that. Werner von Braun is well known for those who remember the Apollo moon landing during the Ford administration. Von Braun was almost awarded the Presidential Medal of Honor because he helped to develop and create the Apollo moon landing, or he was instrumental in it. And but one of the advisors found out his Nazi background, and so they didn't give him the medal that they were looking for. It was about 120 German scientists, engineers, and technicians that developed the Saturn V launch vehicle. After leaving the Washington Post in 1977, Carl Bernstein, you probably have heard of him from Watergate fame, spent 6 months looking into the relationship of the CIA and the press. So Carl Bernstein writes an article, and he talks about the CIA and the media. So you had Operation Paperclip, which is where they took Nazi scientists and brought them to America, and they used their research in order to advance science, technology, and weapons of warfare. You have the CIA and the media. It's called Operation Mockingbird, and so they got the mainstream media was employed by the CIA in order to promote their agenda. Carl Bernstein, as I stated, was one of the reporters from the Watergate era, and he was on the at the Washington Post. So after he left the Washington Post, he wrote a story published in Rolling Stone magazine on October 20th, 1977. And it talks about the CIA and the media. It says in 1953, Joseph Alsop, one of America's leading syndicated columnists, went to the Philippines to cover an election. He did not go because he was asked to do so by the syndicate. He did not go because he was asked to do by the newspapers. He went at the request of the CIA. So the CIA started to use these reporters in mainstream media to not only gain intel from them, to try to get a relationship with people and compromise governmental leaders from other nations, but then they also use the media in order to promote their propaganda. Again, this is one of the strategies that was developed in Nazi Germany, because in Nazi Germany you had a person who was called the Minister of Propaganda, and what they did is they used mainstream media, they used movies and other medium to sway public opinion to get them to go into war. And that's what they have done in the United States, because they've gotten they use the same strategies and technologies here in the United States. And mainstream media has a very, very is very heavily influenced by the CIA and the Illuminati, which is why a lot of people don't realize when President Trump said he didn't trust the intelligence agencies, it's because he's basically bringing to light the fact that the CIA actually uses mainstream media to manipulate public opinion. You know, 90% of the media is owned by 6 corporations, and all those corporations are either owned by or part of the Illuminati, one world governmental system. To understand the role, most journalists, operatives, they have operatives that actually work for the CIA that are journalists. The acquisition of secrets from foreign governments is almost always done by foreign nationals who have been recruited by the CIA and are under CIA control in their own countries. Many journalists were used by the CIA to assist in the process, and they had the reputation of being among the best in the business. They also recruited foreign officers in other countries to work for the CIA. I don't want to read all this to you. It says, this article that I'm talking to you about, Carl Bernstein wrote, often the CIA's relationship with journalists might begin informally with a lunch drink, a casual exchange of information. Agency official might then offer a favor. For example, a trip to another country that's difficult to reach, and in return, he would want something in return. Another official described a typical example of why the accredited journalists, either paid or unpaid by the CIA, might be used by the agency. In return for our giving them information, we'd ask them to do things to fit their roles as journalists that they wouldn't have thought unless it was put in their mind. For instance, a reporter in Vienna would say to our man, "I met an interesting second secretary of the Czech embassy," and we'd say, "Can you get to know him?" And after that, when you get to know him, can you assess him for us? And then we put him in touch with us. Formal recruitment of reporters was generally handled at high levels after the journalists had undergone a thorough background check. The actual approach might even be made by a deputy director or division chief. The secrecy agreement was a sort of ritual that you go into the tabernacle, the former assistant to the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and after that you had to play by the rules. And so they would recruit them, they would offer them favors, and then they would get them to work for the CIA. So it was a two-way thing. They would give them information for their media publications. They, you know, breaking news that insider, or they would say they have an insider report, and then they would get this information. And they would also have to report in accordance to what the CIA told them to, and they couldn't say things when they were told not to report on them by the CIA. So that was Operation Mockingbird. Okay, so you had Operation Paperclip, you have Operation Mockingbird. These are all CIA things that they did. You had what's called MK Ultra, and this is from the History Channel. This is, again, this is well known, well documented. This is public record. MK Ultra was a top secret CIA project in which the agency conducted hundreds of clandestine experiments, sometimes on unwitting U.S. citizens.
It is a form of mental invasion and mental torture of a prisoner, which is forbidden.
couldn't possibly do anything like that. In addition, couldn't conceivably imagine that a thing like that would remain secret forever.
LSD, this is in the 60s, LSD and other drugs for mind control, information gathering, and psychological torture. Though Project MK Ultra lasted from 1953 until 1973, details of the illicit program didn't become public until 1975 during a congressional investigation into widespread illegal CIA activities within the United States and around the world. The Cold War, during the time of the Cold War, between the Soviet Union, United States, and North Korea, they learned and perfected brainwashing techniques. Again, a lot of this came from Nazi Germany. They perfected it so they would use drugs like LSD and other mind-altering drugs. They use what's called torture techniques. So it's trauma-based mind control that they use. And just to let you know how they do that, a lot of actors and actresses are now under the MK Ultra program. They acted as though it was done in 1973. They collected a whole bunch of data. That's why the hippie movement in the 1960s, when they had LSD, became very popular. Many of the soldiers that went to Vietnam, it was reported that they used MK Ultra techniques on them, which is why a lot of the Vietnam veterans have a lot of mental disorders. If you think about it, you had World War II, you had the Civil War and these other wars, and you didn't have such a high level of people coming back with such severe mental disorders. I knew a couple personally, older gentlemen. I wasn't, I was young during the Vietnam era, but a lot of them have mental disorders, even to this day, because of some of the experimentation that was done on them. The covert operation aimed to develop techniques.
Trauma-based mind control is a horrific practice that really came out of the occult. If you go back to Crowley and his cult that he had inside of the Loch Ness house, you'll find that they were eating feces, that they were debasing themselves in the most greatest ways that they could. This was supposed to purify your soul by doing the most horrific things you can imagine. And trauma-based mind control came out of this, went into the projects like MK Ultra and Project Monarch, and they started to use these techniques. Now, if you want to know exactly or nearly what trauma-based mind control entails, the movie The Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher lays it out step by step. And you will find that movie to be very horrific. And if you got a copy of Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler's book, How to Create Your Own Undetectable Illuminati Mind Control Slave, you can lay that book down side by side while watching the movie and see that it almost goes chapter for chapter in the effects of trauma-based mind control and how they are done. So yeah, the butterfly effect, which is a curious name because part of this is to open the soul to these entities. And Crowley wrote a book called The Moon Child. And the Moon Child was an idea that these magicians have to be able to incarnate a god form into a child. Now, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, they worked on this heavily while exploding nuclear devices. All right, they were actually putting babies in. I mean, this isn't confirmed, but this is the story. in chambers under the nuke explosions and trying to create this moon child. Now, the reason I connect this to the Butterfly Effect movie is that the second title to Crowley's book, The Moon Child, it's called The Butterfly Net. And of course, the Monarch program comes into this very heavily, and you'll see the Monarch symbolism everywhere, magical practices. And Brittany is a classic example of what a monarch might appear like. With all her different personalities. And then even Steven Spielberg made this a popular notion by putting out the TV show The United States of Tara, where they basically asked you, wouldn't you like to have a bunch of multiple personalities so that you can have one deal with this problem and another deal with that problem? Which altar would you choose? You know? So they have popularized this thing, and Project Monarch is openly mentioned in Disney's Marvel, The Avengers. We find the effects of trauma-based mind control portrayed constantly in the Star Wars Clone Wars animation series. They put most of the characters, and especially the young children, in that cartoon through trauma-based mind control situations, such as sticking a child into an electrified cage. That happens in that child's cartoon is one of the things. There's numerous, though, if you watch it. So it has become so popularized now that it's just a common social norm. And we are all now victims of this trauma-based mind control through the Hollywood
psychological manipulators.
Screen.
They now use it for Hollywood. A lot of these stars are under MK Ultra mind control. A lot of the children actors that have been abused or something like that, they're under MK Ultra. If you ever notice with Disney was very instrumental in using MK Ultra techniques, and they worked with the CIA for a long time. That's why a lot of these Disney kids, when they come up through the ranks, and I know this stuff is hard for you to believe, some of the stuff you've never heard before, but if you notice the pattern, a lot of these Disney children, when they get to a certain age, they start to have breakdowns, right? So you look at people like Amanda Bynes or even Britney Spears. When they get to a certain age, their programming starts to, you know, disconnect, and then they say that they are under stress, and then they have to go to a rehab. A lot of them, they say they're under drug. Kanye West is reported to be an MK Ultra altered mind control person. If you notice, in 2016, after the election, he made this big speech about Donald Trump and MTV, and everybody's been lying to you. Then supposedly he had a meltdown or a psychological issue, as they said. He had to go to a mental hospital, and now a lot of them walk around as zombies. That's all part of MK Ultra. So what they do is it's trauma-based mind control. They learn techniques to torture people, and it splinters your personality. And when it splits your personality, then they can insert a alter into the person. And so they use trigger words that trigger them. Some athletes have been reported to be MK Ultra, which is how they can go under intense focus. You know, some of these mass shootings have been reported to be MK Ultra people that they've been mind controlled. They've been put under torture. If you notice, most of these mass shooters, they'll tell you that they're on some kind of psychotropic drugs. You know, the gentleman in Newtown was supposedly had Asperger's, but he drove all the way from, I think it was Virginia, up to Connecticut, and he had this assault weapon, and he went in and strategically and tactically went in and shot people in school. First of all, anybody who knows anything about Asperger's, they can't function like that. People with Asperger's, one of the keys of Asperger's is they don't have a lot of physical coordination. They're uncoordinated. There's kind of a detachment because it's almost like a form of autism, so they're somewhat detached from reality. They wouldn't plan something like that far in ahead. So one of the theories, which is a very reasonable one, is that these people that do these mass shootings are under some type of psychotropic drugs or MK Ultra mind control. Holmes, what was his name, in Colorado, the Colorado shooter. If you notice, when they arrested him for shooting in the movie theater, he had his hair orange and everything. For the first week of the trial, he didn't even talk to anybody. He was completely zombified. So how do you go from shooting all these people and barring the door shut and having all these assault weapons to being a complete zombie and not even knowing where you're at. So these are some of the reported cases of MK Ultra mind control that's still being used in America in many different ways. So they use it for their benefit. Some of these stars, they allow them to perform. So they go in and they click into a different personality, and once they click into this personality, they can perform and do whatever they're told to do. Hugh Hefner was actually part of the CIA psychological operations, and they had this program called Sex Kittens. So these Playboy bunnies, many of them was called sex kittens. They would program these MK Ultra sex kittens, and they could go in and they would seduce people. They can gather information. It's just like you see in the movies. A lot of times in the movies, it's based on reality because, as I'm going to show you, part of the MK Ultra programming was that the CIA also funds many of the Hollywood projects. It says the U.S. government and Hollywood have always been close. Washington, D.C. has long been a source of intriguing plots for filmmakers, and L.A. has been a generous provider of glamorous glitz. It says files we obtain, and of course this is declassified documents. You have Freedom of Information Act, so this is classified documents that after a certain period of time you can request to see them, and by law the government has to show it to you. It says files obtained through the U.S. Freedom of Information Act show that between 1911 and 2017, more than 800 feature films received support from the U.S. government's Department of Defense, significantly higher figure than previous estimates indicated. These included blockbuster franchise hits such as the Transformers, Iron Man, and the Terminator. On television, we found that 1,100 titles received Pentagon backing, 900 of them since 2005. So just since 2005, over 900 television programs receive backing, financial backing from the Pentagon. Included in these are from Flight 93, Ice Road Truckers, and Army Wives were some of the shows that were funded by the Department of Defense or the Pentagon. When we include individual episodes for long-running shows like 24, the series 24, Homeland, NCIS, as well as the influence of other major organizations like the FBI and the White House, we can establish unequivocally for the first time that the national security state has supported thousands of hours of entertainment. So they use Hollywood, television, etc., to promote their agendas. It says the CIA has assisted in 60 film and television shows since its formation in 1947. So that's from documentation that are declassified.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dr. Steve Pachenik, and the first podcast that I'd like to make is a story about a movie that's coming out on December 19th called Zero Dark 30, directed by a woman who I have a very great respect for, Catherine Bigelow, a director who really is the first woman ever to win the Academy Awards as a woman for a film that I thought was exceedingly good called Hurt Locker. So I'm going to tell you the things that I like about her and I like about what she's done about the film Zero Dark 30, which I have not seen, but I know quite a lot about. So let's first talk about the subject matter. The subject matter of the film as it's presented, because it's going to be a big blockbuster December 19th, and I hope many of you may see it, and many of you may not see it. I can't tell you to go or not to go to see it, but this is my attitude towards it. Number one, in the world of fantasy, fiction does prevail, so the right of Hollywood and the right of Catherine Bigelow and the Academy of Arts and Sciences, which dominates Hollywood, has the right to distort or to fantasize any point of fact or fiction. But this is fiction on steroids, this movie in particular. And why do I say that? Number one, once again, the lie that Osama bin Laden was killed and by the SEAL team has been propagated not only by President Obama to get him reelected. He knew that was a lie. I knew that was a lie. The CIA that I've worked with knows that it was a lie. Military intelligence knows it's a lie. Everybody in the intelligence community, and now by now almost the whole world knows that that's an absolute lie. Now, why do I say it's a lie? Osama bin Laden was already dead or about to be dead. I didn't make that up. I basically knew of the man because he had a disease called Marfan syndrome. Marfan syndrome is not something that I, as a physician, can make up. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist and neurologist. It's a disease that's genetically inherited. He had that disease. He was born of a Yemeni mother and a Saudi father. He was involved in Afghanistan, where I knew about his activities, and we knew then from his medical records that he had Marfan syndrome. And what that means, in effect, is that your connective tissues will disintegrate and that you have a very short lifespan. Now, that type of termination of a disease is imminent. It's not something that you can wish and prolong. It's pretty much final. And the answer for that is that in the May or in the summer of 2001, under our President Bill Clinton and Sandy Berger, the National Security Advisor, Tom Dooley of the CIA Medical Division was sent to Dubai, where already Osama bin Laden was dying in the Anglo-American hospital. And you can check the records. I didn't make it up. The CIA never denied that. The intelligence community never denied it. But I knew that. It was a point of fact that he was already dying, if not already about to die. And then what happened on 9/11, 2001, was the storyline that Osama bin Laden created an attack on the United States and the World Trade Center, and then the rest of it, you know. I don't have to elaborate it. And the next day, I went on the radio and announced that this was a lie, that basically the attack was a stand-down, a false flag, created by Bush Jr., Cheney.
Do you ever encounter people on certain forums, message boards, or conversation threads online that are unabashedly pro-US? Now, I'm sure you're thinking, yes, of course. Why would that be strange? There are a lot of people out there supportive of the US government engaging in conversations in the social media world. But I don't mean those people. I mean the online personas that, oddly enough, are unrelenting in their patriotic vitriol and troll for literally hours trying to debunk legitimate questions or any opposition to the establishment. Sometimes it almost seems like these people might even be getting paid to do it. I mean, how else could they expel that insane amount of time and energy on these comment threads trying to argue how wrong you are? Well, this might be old news to some, but last year it was confirmed that the US military has been manipulating social media by using fake identities to influence conversations and spread pro-American propaganda. It's called Online Persona Management Services. And under the CENTCOM contract, it allows the creation of up to 10 sock puppet accounts for every US serviceman or woman working on the program. The stipulations are that every fake persona must have a convincing background, history, and supporting friend networks so that it will remain undetectable from even the most sophisticated adversaries. According to The Guardian, the project has been likened by web experts to China's attempts to control and restrict free speech on the internet. And that critics are saying that it allows the US military to create a false consensus in online conversations, crowd out unwelcome opinions, and smother commentaries or reports that do not correspond with its own objectives. Now, of course, according to CENTCOM, their only objective is to counter violent extremist and enemy propaganda outside of the US, and that it would be unlawful to address US audiences with the technology. Wow, unlawful, really? Interesting. Because the newest version of the 2013 NDAA included an interesting amendment. This amendment legalized domestic propaganda on the American public. You heard me right. The newest NDAA wasn't just reauthorizing the indefinite detention of American citizens. It also allowed the US government to legally carry out misinformation campaigns against the citizens of this country. But is this really surprising to anyone? I mean, the corporate media is basically a propaganda arm of the US government anyways, isn't it? Why the need to legalize the use of propaganda when you already have an entire mainstream media establishment lacking to the White House, reprinting government press releases without question, selling wars, and carrying water for the administration? In fact, aside from everything I just mentioned, the Pentagon already spends $4 billion a year to influence public opinion, and the Department of Defense also spends hundreds of millions of dollars on information campaigns in countless countries occupied by the U.S. military. But perhaps even more disturbing than all of this is the fact that the CIA has already been infiltrating the biggest press institutions since the early 1950s. One has to look no further than Operation Mockingbird, a secret CIA campaign to spread disinformation and false stories to foreign governments during the Cold War. It did this by manipulating the media into focusing on propaganda, sabotage, and subversion. It was later revealed in congressional hearings that the CIA program consisted of literally paying off editors and reporters at most mainstream news outlets. The New York Times, CBS, Time, The Washington Post, Newsweek, AP, Reuters, and countless more. In one instance, a journalist named Joseph Alsop, who's alleged to have been one of the most prominent journalists working under Operation Mockingbird, wrote foreign affairs articles that appeared in over 300 publications. So, isn't it nice to know that the supposed watchdogs of the government can be so easily bought? Even though the intent of this program was to focus on matters outside of this country, it undoubtedly influenced everyone living here at the time. People to this day could still be reading and referencing these articles, not knowing that they're completely fake. And sure, this is more than 50 years ago, but let's face the facts here. Our media is much worse now and has been much more easily compromised now. So how do we know that Operation Mockingbird still isn't in effect? Well, we don't. So, the next time you sit down to read the Sunday paper or visit an online forum, just remember,
and you understand what is happening in the world today and where the American people are heading as a nation. We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But now, the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries. David Rockefeller.
It says that for a while they had kind of went away from this, but it says the CIA established an entertainment liaison office in 1996. It made up for lost time, most emphatically on the Al Pacino film The Recruit, and the Osama bin Laden assassination movie Zero Dark 30. Leaked private memos published by our colleague Tricia Jenkins in 2016 and other memos published in 2013 by the mainstream media indicate that each of these productions was heavily influenced by government officials. Both heightened or inflated real-world threats and dampened down government malfeasance. One of the most surprising alterations we found was an unpublished interview regarding the comedy Meet the Parents. The CIA admitted it had asked Robert De Niro's character not to possess an intimidating array of agency torture manuals. So sometimes when they hit too close to home, the CIA or the Department of Defense would come in and they would change the scripts. Number 5, false flag attacks. So false flag attacks that they have done traditionally, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. False flag basically is when the government sets up a scenario to push an agenda. And so during the time of Vietnam, they had what was called the Gulf of Tonkin. So they had people dress up as Vietnamese soldiers and attack American assets, which gave them the permission to go into the Vietnam War. They did that in Nazi Germany as well. They had people dress up as Russian soldiers and attack Germans. And so Germany was able to go into the war. And also many people have reported that we've done that in America several times. There was some declassified documents in the Kennedy papers that found out that they had actually planned on faking a Russian attack on U.S. soil so that they could go to war with Russia back in the 60s and the 70s. And many people say that JFK intervened and wouldn't allow them to do it, which is part of the reason why he was assassinated. That and the fact that he tried to take away the printing power for money from the Federal Reserve, the central banks, and so these are a couple of reasons it's reported that he was assassinated. One of the pieces of documents, and I'm going to close with this. One of the pieces of documents, it reads that these were all in the JFK documents. Okay, I'm gonna give you this one, and then I'm going to. It says it's unclear when the memo was written or circulated, but the National Security Council staff mentioned a meeting on March 22nd, 1962, when a special group discussed the Attorney General's questions about acquiring Soviet aircraft. The document was last reviewed by the CIA in 1998. It says that they were going to get a Soviet aircraft and use it to attack Americans in order for them to go into war, to stir up a war with Russia. Here's two of the others. It says the revelation, part of this documentation, a trove of thousands of documents released by the National Archives surrounding investigations into the assassination of President John F. Kennedy and related events. The documents come from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, and other agencies. The release has been scheduled since 1992, but recently President Trump released the documents, and so they're now there for public viewing. Documents have been released in several batches and have revealed the FBI closely monitored Martin Luther King Jr.'s sex life, that a UK paper received an anonymous tip about the assassination of JFK before it happened, and that Lee Harvey Oswald called the Cuban embassy in Mexico about getting a visa before the assassination, and other tidbits. They also said it was reported before time that Lee Harvey Oswald was going to be assassinated as well. Again, these are all declassified documents. You can find it for yourself. You got to realize that this one world government is a very wicked thing, and the reason that they're okay with doing this is because, just like in Genesis 3, they believe that they're gods and they can determine what's right and what's wrong, and so they feel no guilt of doing these type of things and manipulating the public opinion for their own purposes. This has been Pastor Joe Green, and I'm going to share some video clips and some other things to give you information on how you can find this information for yourself. But my desire is always for us to have our eyes open. The Bible says when the Lord comes, he's going to come as a thief in the night. He says, but you're not children of the night, you're children of the day. So be vigilant, watchful, and sober, so that you know the time of his arrival. Until next time, be blessed. I love you. Shalom.
I thought that it was a matter of real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here, because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now, we're looking at that very carefully.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to two American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole news and public affairs operation in 1954, the ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them.
We have quite a lot of detailed information, and we will evaluate it, and we will include any evidence of wrongdoing or any evidence of impropriety in our final report and make recommendations.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
Senator, do you think that you named the news organizations in your final report?
That remains to be decided.
I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
Well, Kendall claims that she was purchased by wealthy clients to do anything they pleased. Now, sometimes she was used as arm candy, others for very sick games. On the outside, her clients were pillars of their communities, but behind closed doors, she says they were sinister and evil human beings.
The clients I was forced to have sex with were very rich and powerful, very important VIPs. They were in law enforcement, doctors, psychiatrists, judges, politicians, even people who owned sports teams. I attended many parties for people who had just got elected into office. When I would attend these events, I had to look pretty and act like I belonged there. I had to know how to hold a conversation about politics. I would be at all of these nice events, but it would never end nice for me. At parties where people knew what we were there for, the clients would treat us really poorly. Many times clients were physically abusive.